Okay, welcome everybody. It's Craig Fisher with TalentNet Media. This is part of the Inside Talent podcast, and I'm here with Keith Hulen from SmartRank AI. And today we are going to talk a little bit about one of the topics that will be upcoming at TalentNet Live on March 10th in Austin at Whole Foods Market headquarters, and that is being effective with hiring managers and how that can affect retention in your organization. So we've got a few fun topics and questions that Keith and I are going to discuss today. Keith, how you doing? Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, doing great, Craig. Excited for TalentNet Live in Austin in about a week or so. So I'll be down there. Yeah, so my background is actually a little bit different in the talent acquisition field. I actually came up as a hiring manager. So I've spent the last 20 plus years as a hiring manager, but intimately involved in the recruiting process. And then about 3 years ago, I decided that I really wanted to figure out and dissect and understand why there seemed to always be so much dysfunction between talent acquisition and hiring managers. So I dug into it and started to see some consistent themes and tried to get into the root cause for some of those problems. And we did. And so we built the software now that we believe addresses those in a major way.
Yeah, so I appreciate that you're mentioning that right up front, because SmartRank.ai is how you get to the website, and SmartRank is one of our generous sponsors for the TalentNet Live conference. Keith, tell us just a little bit quickly about how SmartRank addresses the hiring manager issue.
Sure. Well, high level, SmartRank 100% completely automates the job applicant screening process, completely automates it. But it automates it, one, without needing and using a resume at all. Two, it stack ranks and filters those job applicants. So managing them is so much faster and easier. But three, and maybe the most important piece, is that when you're passing over a candidate or an applicant to a hiring manager, you're giving them exactly what they said that they're looking for. Not kind of, and I know that there's AI in our name, so I'll just say this up front. There's no AI magic that's happening. We're not doing anything on the front end with AI. It is specifically asking 100% of the applicants exactly what the screening questions would be that the hiring manager wants to know. And then it's just giving them an exact percentage match to that. So when you hand somebody to them, you say, this is a 93% match to exactly what you said that you're looking for.
Right. And then it's kind of on them, right? If they want to reject everyone after that, that's really sort of their fault. And the intake meeting is something that we've talked about a lot at the TalentNet Live conferences over the years, because it is an art form. But this is taking it a step further and really saying, all right, I'm not just going to do an intake. Basically, here's a survey, and you need to tell us exactly. And let's just say that job descriptions are terrible because we don't look at them, with the microscope that we should. We just keep copying and pasting. And is that why hiring manager engagement is one of the top 5 priorities for TA every year?
It is a top 5 priority every year, and you have to wonder, why is it on there every year? And to answer your question directly, absolutely it is. I mean, listen, it's a very unfair ask to ask a recruiter to be a subject matter expert for every role they're hiring for. That is a complete unfair ask. And then what tools are you giving them? You're giving them a job description, and these job descriptions, they're all the same. I don't care if you're the biggest company in this country or the smallest one, they use the same language. Familiarity with, knowledge of, experience in, proficiency with, it doesn't matter. Those terms have not been defined. And if you don't define those terms, then they remain subjective and ambiguous right from the beginning, right from the very beginning. Let's say you do a 15 to 20 minute intake meeting, and you find out, what are your nice to have, what do you need to have, what are your knockouts, and is there anything else I need to know about this role? That's fine. But intake meetings, job descriptions, and resumes for that matter, all of that stuff is all the tip of the iceberg. That's all still surface level information. What you need to know is what does proficiency in that particular tool, or what does experience in this particular field or area, what does that mean? How would you define that? How would you determine if somebody is or isn't proficient in this particular area?
Right. So what exactly are those qualifications? What does it mean? Who's defining that? What does proficiency mean?
Yeah.
And how can you equate retention to something that is undefined in the first place?
Yeah. So, I think that this has a massive impact downstream. So, listen, if you're not identifying exactly what they're needing from the very beginning of this process, then who are you kidding when you get all the way down the road and you say, oh, yeah, this person turned over 45 days later? Oh, why did they turn over? Well, they turned over because, they didn't have these certain types of qualifications, these like minimum qualifications we really need for them to do this job. When should that have been identified? 45 days after they join? The third interview in? The first interview in? No.
Right.
So many of these things should be defined in the very beginning. And there's a lot of money and there's a lot of time wasted trying to figure out what those qualifications are. Let's face it. I mean, when a lot of recruiters are handing over resumes, they're gauging the hiring manager to see, do you like this person? Do you not like this person? Why don't you like them? Why do you like them? Because let's just face it, they don't know. And again, they can't be expected to know exactly what's in that hiring manager's mind. If you don't talk about it and define it in the beginning, you're just kind of running out there and just kind of, trying to figure it out as you go. Is that a good plan? Like, that's not a strategy at all, So, and then, yes, that's going to have an impact on retention down the road. Now, is it going to, if you identify those on the front end, is that going to drop your turnover by 50%? Maybe not, but maybe it drops it by 5%, maybe 10%, maybe 15%. And when you look at the costs associated with turnover, you could still be talking about hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars.
So I'm working on a project right now with my team at TalentNet Media where we are rewriting hundreds of jobs with a large financial institution. And we're changing some of the words, right? There's a lot of bias built into the way job descriptions were written years ago. And that hasn't changed much over many, many years, right? So we're changing some of the words, but we're not sort of strictly defining what they mean. And maybe there should be a curriculum that says proficiency means X and excellence in means Y. But how would we even measure that? And how do we measure the outcome? So I guess my question is, what part does data analytics play in all this?
Data analytics is critical. It is absolutely critical. Anybody that is trying to focus on what the right qualifications are without detailed data on that is kind of flying blind, I would say. Look, let's take an example like data as it relates to recruiter and hiring manager engagement. When you look at data, if you walk back in and you don't have data, you're going to have an anecdotal conversation. And that's going to have assumptions and opinions baked in. If I walk back into a conversation as a recruiter with a hiring manager and I say, hey, it's really hard to find this person with these qualifications, what do you think the hiring manager is thinking? They're not thinking to themselves, oh, well, I guess you're right. It's probably hard. They're like, where are you looking? Are you really asking the right questions? Like, how are you really identifying this? Assumptions, opinions. You walk back in with data and
Right.
you say something like, for instance, like within our software, as an example, you walk back and you say, we've had 162 people apply for this role. That's data. And the highest percentage match that we have to what your qualifications were that you said you're looking for is a 21% match. That's an exact 21%. That's the number one ranked person, is a 21% match. So this isn't Keith's opinion. This is exactly what the data says based on what you said you're looking for, detailed to what you said you're looking for. So now we can start making faster and better decisions moving forward. Do you want to hire the person that's your top rank? They're a 21% match. They're going to be a 21. Do you want to hold out and wait? because I'm going to tell you to buckle in. We've already had 162 people apply for this. So you can wait and look for a 95%, but it's probably going to be a while. So buckle in. Or 3, we can change the criteria, because it's pretty obvious that you were looking for a purple and pink polka dotted unicorn that doesn't really exist. But the data shows us that, not Keith's opinion shows us that.
Yeah, it's hard to have a convincing conversation without data, right? And we know that the hiring manager, once you walk out of the office, is going to jump right on LinkedIn and start looking themselves to prove to themselves that these people exist. And he will find some that exist. Will they apply to the job? Probably not, but that's not his problem. They exist. And so TA and hiring managers have different agendas, right? It's
Totally.
it's an epic battle. Our agenda is to provide candidates based on what the manager says. The manager's agenda is to get his projects done within his budget and within his timeline, or her budget or her timeline, right? And changing hiring manager behavior is difficult, almost impossible, in fact, without data. And so until those sort of opposing sides are reconciled, this is always going to be a problem.
It's so let's dive into a really quick thing. I just read this research just yesterday, right? So this research comes up and it's talking about KPIs in the industry, and it's talking about what are the KPIs that everyone's tracking. So just data for the audience here that I found super interesting in here. When you look at conflicting priorities, right? What are the things that talent acquisition is typically looking at? They're looking at things like time to hire, time and process, maybe even cost per hire. But what is it that the hiring managers really want? And what does the organization overall really need? It's quality of hire. But let me share some data, because I had to write this down for this meeting. So I'm going to read you 4 things. 1 is, what recruiting KPIs do you currently track? Number 1 is time to hire. 2 is source of hire. 3 is offer acceptance rate. The bottom 3 are quality of hire, hiring manager satisfaction, and interviewer workload, which is basically how much time are they spending per week. The second thing, what challenges are you currently facing that impact your ability to hit hiring goals? The number 1 difficulty finding quality candidates. That's the number 1 answer. Okay. So just look at that real quick. You don't track quality of hire. It's at the bottom. But that's the number 1 challenge that you have. And it's almost double what the next answer was on that list. And then the third thing, which of the following recruiting technologies do you currently use? ATS and candidate sourcing software are number 1 and 2. The last 2 on the list, candidate assessment tools and candidate screening tools. And then the fourth one, where will you invest your talent acquisition budget in 2023? Number 1 is sourcing tools and tech. Number 2 is recruitment marketing. Number 3 is ATS. It's not on that list. Anything associated with quality of the people you're looking at. So right. What does this mean? The biggest challenge is quality. That's what the data. So when you put all this together, we don't track quality. We don't have a system that is able to even track quality, even if we wanted to. And we're not going to invest in anything to track quality. Why would you guess that you're going to have any type of a different outcome when it comes to quality of hire and ultimately retention and turnover?
So that sounds expensive to me. My favorite KPI is cost per interview, which, right, from a recruitment marketing and talent operations perspective, that makes sense. Managers couldn't care less about that, right? Hiring managers, they don't mind that at all. But I guess it boils down to, are you just trying to fill the funnel? Are you just trying to attract clicks and applicants? And I'll tell you, working with high volume or even with IT, with distributed office locations, you hear from the field when volume of applicants goes down. But even if you give the field, hiring managers, whoever, the information about conversion rates, well, look, yes, you got lots of applicants because we've got this quick apply that doesn't ask any screening questions. So you've got lots of applicants, but you're only converting less than 3% of those. So we kind of fixed it. Your volume went down, but you're converting 70% now or whatever, right? They don't understand that. They don't care about that. So how do you kind of explain the hard and soft costs of turnover to get people to listen?
Yeah, so let's just say this out front. You know what the hiring manager wants as their priority? They want to not be hiring for that same role in 2 months or 6 months or a year,
That's right.
frankly. It's hiring is one of the least favorite activities or tasks that a leader has to do is hiring. So again, back to the kind of, conflict in those priorities. Hiring managers don't want to be hiring for people. When it comes to uh, like what those conflicting priorities mean. I think the hard and soft costs of turnover, the hard costs are expensive. A lot of companies don't track turnover costs. They don't. Now, why? I mean, maybe they're scared to see what those results would be, but there's a lot of money spent. I went through SHRM and I went through all these other systems and I pulled very conservative data on what the average turnover rate is and what the, average corporate salary is. And I pulled that data and I pulled for about a 2,000 person company, average, extremely conservative. This is like a 19% average turnover rate. Costs an organization about $9 million a year. So I ran through that and I used, again, very conservative numbers. It's costing them about 9 million. So like I said earlier, even if you adjust that by, you don't reduce it by 70% or 50%, but by 10%, it's almost $1 million, right? I mean, that's not bad. I mean, I'm sure you could reallocate $900,000 somewhere in the company. But the more expensive piece you have is probably the soft cost. The soft costs are the piece of that dysfunction that exists, that hiring managers that are just unbelievably frustrated. Do you know how many hiring managers I've spoken to that say, I don't even use my TA team. I just say, just send the resume straight to me and I'll just review them myself. Or like you said earlier, don't worry about it. I'm going to go and I'm going to look on LinkedIn myself. Or we have resources, but I'm going to use this external recruiting firm at 30% of the first year salary. That's where I'm going to go. And now your costs, talk about going back to hard costs. Now those costs are just, going up more and more and more. Well, why? You shouldn't have that. You have an internal team that's meant to help you hire the best quality people. Let's before we start doing this other stuff, why don't we figure out what's going on there? That's where we need to get into the root cause of those issues.
So I work with internal teams a lot that don't know what Boolean means,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, so I get it. I mean, and that's nothing on them. It's they were hired for their level, right, and their salary, and they're hired to be order takers, let's say. And again, it's nothing on them, but it's not a good process, right? And I had a hiring leader yesterday call me to say, and this is a big company, it's a Fortune 20 company, call me to say, hey, do you know someone who's good at sourcing for executive search? Because our recruiter or recruiters for that are not. They just don't do it. And I'm thinking to myself, this is amazing. I mean, how do you need an outside? I mean, and everyone does, right? Whoever you think of your top 10 executive search firms, they make a killing for a reason. But even just the sourcing part, that shouldn't be a deal. You should have those skills internally, but most companies just don't. So, is the TA team responsible for a bad hire if we're using a lot of external sources? And if they are, uh, how long are they responsible for that? When are they off the hook? Is it 30 days, 60, 90? How long do you wait until you've decided that a hire is going to stay or work out?
I was on a recruiting roundtable a couple weeks ago. This exact topic came up. This exact question was raised. And I was shocked, frankly, to hear a lot of the recruiters were like, I'll accept that up to 60 days, or I'll even accept it up to 90 days, or, Some people were on the opposite side. They're like, no, nothing past 30 days. After that, that's on the manager, that's on the corporate, whatever. I'm sitting there thinking it should be 0 days.
Right.
And there's people on this call right now that are like, oh, that's crazy. That'll never fly. It's not crazy. If you go back and identify, and everyone's on the same exact page, very clear about, you said this is exactly what you're looking for from a qualification standpoint. And I hand you that person. And
Right.
again, if they're a 97% match to exactly what you're looking for, I've done my job in TA. My job isn't necessarily to understand if they're going to be a perfect culture fit, a perfect team fit, and those types of things. I'm hiring for 20 different recs or maybe more. So my job is to go and make sure that I'm providing you qualified applicants. And your job, hiring manager, and the whole team of 7 interviews that you all did, is to figure out whether or not that person's a good team and culture fit, and whether or not, they're going to be able to work out here. So their job should be done when they hand that person over. The problem is they don't have a way to say, I gave you a 97% match right now. They're saying,
right.
Here's 7 resumes. Do you like any of these people? And then the hiring manager says, you know what, just schedule 2 interviews with those people. Are those the 2 best people out of the 112 applicants that applied? Do we know that for a fact? We don't. Those are 2 people that happen to have good looking resumes.
Yeah, there's a lot of bias, implicit bias there, right? And you're 100% right about this. It's arbitrary. Good-looking resumes is right, and a hiring manager in a corporate environment is lucky, and it's a rare thing when they do have a recruiter that understands compatibility with that manager. That manager well enough that you've got that nailed. But it's rare. Also, it doesn't mean that the hire is going to end up being good or accurate, or will stay, because circumstances change. So I agree with you. Get the requirements right up front. Get the buy-in. Get everyone to agree on that. And yes, as soon as that hire is made, recruiting doesn't hire people.
Right.
I mean, they might make an offer, but they're not making the decision. And so, I mean, sometimes they are, but rarely. And so I think you're right. As soon as that decision's made, it's out of TA's hands.
That's right. And to kind of bring a lot of these topics that we've said, together, you've got data, and that kind of factors in here. Listen, let's just talk about what does that relationship between the recruiter and the hiring manager, what should that look like? You brought up the term order takers earlier, and I think about that. And everybody wants to be a business partner, not an order taker. Listen, if you're just going to accept that job description, you're going to go grab a bunch of resumes out of the ATS and throw those to the hiring manager, you're not going to get to that business partner. Now, if you have a way that you can look at data and you can say, because you're not spending, let's say, all your time screening and going through one, applicant at a time and sending resumes over and looking at keywords between those. But now you're sending over qualified. Now, here's the thing. This is where the value and the consultative nature of what talent acquisition can do. Instead of spending that wasted time screening, what if you are spending that time working with the hiring managers to look at the data and say, let's now start looking at correlations. You hired this person, this person, this person, and this person. Which of those are doing well? Well, these 3 are doing amazing. This person's not. Now let's go back and look at the data that we have on these people as far as their qualifications and see what type of commonalities we see there. What are the anomalies that jump out? Recruiters don't have time to do any of that stuff today. Like they're probably laughing at me right now as I say this. So like, yeah, buddy, you try and come and do my job and tell me if you have that. But if you have a system that provides that data and you're not doing these tasks that take up 30 to 70% of your time, and you're having more productive, constructive conversations with the hiring managers, then you can actually be figuring out, what do we need to adjust in the qualifications to really get the best hire? Now you're actually on a path forward, as opposed to this revolving door of, okay, we're back to hiring another Java developer, same job description, you got it. Here's some more resumes. You got it.
Yeah.
Same intake. Do I even need to do the intake? Is it the same thing? Same thing. Okay, same thing. Revolving door, revolving door, revolving door. There's no path down the field.
Yeah. So I take away from that as a recruiter, if you're more accurate, you have more time to spend on improving accuracy, right? I mean, that's the bottom line. And that's a better experience for the hiring manager, certainly for the candidate that you're recruiting, who's going to be more accurate. And eventually you, the recruiter. I mean, we're painting recruiters with a broad brush here, right? There's some great recruiters in the world who know what they're doing, but they still get into bad habits and hurry up offense and right a lot of the things that we should be game planning better and using sports analogies now, but that's just the way my brain works. All right, so this is fascinating. Keith and I will talk more about this at the TalentNet Live Conference next Friday, a week from Friday, March 10th at Whole Foods Market headquarters in Austin. We're really excited to be back in person at Whole Foods. You can register at talentnetlive.com. You can find more about Keith and SmartRank at SmartRank AI. And we encourage you to connect with him. And we look forward to seeing you on more of these broadcasts and hopefully at the TalentNet Live Conference. Keith, thank you.
Thank you, Craig. This was a lot of fun, and I'll see you in like a week.
All right. Fantastic. We're going to have some fun for sure.